Today, we're checking out a bunch of different microphones and comparing them all. We're going to be taking a look at the DJI Mic system, and we're also going to be taking a look at the Saramonic Blinkme B2. Both of these microphones are going to also be compared to the Maono dual wireless microphone system, and we're going to compare all of these together. Let's start off with just talking about some of the basics. Some of these microphones have different features. Some of them lack features that others don't have, but for the most part, all of these are roughly about the same. Let's talk about what makes each of these microphones different. I want to say that starting off with the DJI Mic system, you're going to notice that these microphones have both an onboard microphone and the ability for an external microphone, as well as the option to record natively on the actual microphone. But it doesn't have a screen. It doesn't have any really user interface on each of the little microphones. So instead, we're going to switch to the Saramonic Blinkme 2, which each of these little microphones come in these little pucks, and the microphone is on the top, and there is no option for an external microphone. So you have pretty much no way to hook up anything other than this. Now the microphone on this isn't bad. Actually, all these microphones, the built-in microphones, are like basically phenomenal. However, as I said, if you wanted to have an external microphone on here, you're not going to get that. But then again, you also get a fancy screen, which, as I said, I haven't actually ended up using an external microphone before. This also does have built-in recording, so that's going to be something that we're going to notice later on. And it also has native noise cancellation, whereas the DJI microphones does not have native noise cancellation. All that has to be done in post. So no noise canceling, and the rest of these microphones will have noise canceling. So you can have the option to select that. And you also have this fancy user interface, which is probably the only device you can select through, and basically select your noise reduction, all these little modifications you make on the physical device, as well as having a ability to control that directly on the receiver here. Also, the only soft case. So other cases have hard cases. The Maono microphones are the only ones that don't have native onboard recording. So you have to basically get the information out of the receiver. And they do have that, of course, built-in microphone on the top and the ability to record from an external microphone. You also have native noise canceling via a button that just taps on there. And that's pretty much it. These are very, I want to say simple, but they also come with a bunch of accessories. Take a look at some of these accessories you get. You actually get an external microphone as well. So you have an external microphone, a bunch of little accessories, and they're the only microphone to actually come with one. So throughout this video, we're going to compare these in a bunch of different tests. We're going to talk about them and kind of see what their pros and cons are in comparison. First up, I want to talk about sound quality. For all these microphones coming from different companies, especially from Maono, which I haven't actually heard of before this video, I was really kind of surprised on the quality of all of these. The microphone sound quality is great across the board. What's really going to set a microphone apart now, it seems, is really the added plus features. Also, my disclaimers, of course, the Maono microphones and the Saramonic microphones I got for free, and the DJI microphones are some that I purchased. So I try not to let that affect my opinions in these reviews for y'all, but also my disclosure. So sound quality, I want to also point into kind of two categories. All of these basically sound great. So sound quality is pretty solid across the board. Now, when you start to record stuff, there's only two microphones that have that ability, the Saramonic Blinkme B2 and the DJI Mics. And these have the ability to record basically on the device. So you can select onboard recording. The way that these work is you basically have a touch screen, you swipe down and you can select recording here. I actually really like this interface a lot. And since I really don't actually use an external mic on my DJI mics, which is something I've been using for the last like 6 months or so, I'd actually prefer the screen, the user interface, getting some feedback and having the option, of course, to select the sleep time and stuff so that it doesn't turn off. However, I do find that this form factor is a little weird. You, of course, have a bunch of different clip options. You have a clip here. You have the ability for like a puck that clips on the back. And there's a lot of other accessories too that comes with that. So I don't really have much issues in terms of what this comes with or how impractical it is. I just find that the puck is a little large and a little different than the standard microphone form factor. But then again, this is pretty big on the DJI mics as well. Recording sound quality, I'll also play for you real quick, comparing the sound quality from the Saramonic Blinkme B2 and the DJI mics and from what they sound like natively on each of them. So we're going to start off with some testing with no noise cancellation, no noise reduction, and we're just going to see how good each of these microphones sound. As you can see, I'm in a little dark area, so your main focus should be listening with your ears. I'm also turned off all the fans. Everything should be really quiet, so this should be really accurate of what you're actually going to hear with these microphones. And of course, this is the Saramonic Blinkme B2. This is just standard talking, and Yeah, and then this is of course a way kind of talking more into the microphone. And then if I put this up against my chest where you'd be normally hearing this in an everyday situation, maybe you're doing an interview, maybe you're talking to somebody, or maybe you're just doing a YouTube video like this. This is what this would normally sound like in this kind of situation. Let's switch over to another. So right here I have the Maono wireless microphone. This is the WM821. And this is of course at like a roughly mouth distance, talking somewhat normally. And then of course putting this on my chest where you would of course normally hear it in a podcasting situation. Again, maybe you're doing a YouTube video, you're talking or something in this kind of situation, and you want to maybe interview somebody and you want to clip it to here. This is pretty reasonable and a pretty reasonable spot you'd expect to kind of have that conversation with. So you can kind of make the judgment if you think this is a better sounding microphone given kind of what you're hearing normally. And finally, we have the DJI mics, which I actually have to kind of keep kind of far away from me so they don't max out. I'm gonna actually, yeah, I've noticed that it's actually the DJI mics are rather loud by default. And I wonder if I can adjust the volume. Yeah, I can adjust the volume a little bit so they're not as loud, so I can put them roughly as close as the other ones. So as you can see though, this is about normally like the distance away from my face that the other ones were. And then if I put this like kind of next to my mouth or like kind of underneath my face, you can kind of hear how this sounds as well and make the judgment whether or not you want to purchase this one. Keep in mind the fan on my computer just spun up, so it's the first time you'll hear that. But for the most part, I think these sound probably slightly the best, with a very close second being the Saramonic microphones, but I really think that those are pretty solid as well. Now obviously the Maono microphones don't have any built-in recording, so you're not going to get the access to that. I've also found that that's kind of a deal breaker for me in certain situations because I've ended up using the microphones from the DJI to actually do some voiceovers. All you have to do is take one out and push record. Very nice. Whereas the Maono microphones I'd consider, especially with the lack of, I want to say, fancy user interface, they sound great, but they're something that I'd put in a dumb situation, like as in a dumb situation where I don't need to interact much. As you can see here, I had it set up for hooking up a Rode microphone too, something that's a little bit more directional. And I think that would be a better case for maybe like a podcast / interview or something like that. Touching off user interface some more, I've really noticed that the best user interface here so far is of course going to be the Saramonic Blinkme V2. You can't deny the fact that you have 3 touchscreens here and you can control pretty much every aspect. You can put wallpapers on this stuff. Like there is a lot of features that is packed into this little box. Honestly, the user interface on everything on both the DJI mics and this is great, but just having so much more ability to control things on this is just going to set this apart as miles ahead of any competition that we're looking at here in terms of these 3. The DJI mics, at least with the receiver, does pretty great as well. But as you'll see here, this just, as I said, 3 touchscreens, buttons, ability to control plus and minus the sound directly, power buttons, and lots of I/O. Like this takes the cake. This form factor is a little impractical though, but especially because I found that the charging is a little iffy, as well as if you want to have this mounted to your camera, you have to remove one of the microphones and then put the shoe mount in there. And if you want to, like I try not to lose things, I try to keep things together. And it does find that a little impractical when you have, you're done with your recording and you want to just kind of like put this somewhere. You have to then like put everything up rather than just like slopping the, like our case or something. Also, just going off the Saramonic a little bit more, this is the only one that doesn't come with a hard case. I'm not really opposed to the leather or the fabric case. However, I personally don't think there's much need for this camera holder, especially because you could have really made this a whole lot smaller. Like this is such a compact device. You really could have just made a box with maybe a circle or something. You really could have fit it in the same size, to be honest, and then had like all your accessories and stuff in there. You don't need to make it this wide. And this also takes up a lot of space that you really don't need, because I haven't used this really yet. I think next up, of course, is going to be the DJI mics as well, as they do a pretty good job with being able to control it via the receiver. The built-in buttons on there are fine. And the Maono microphones are great, except the receiver has no really touchscreen and no really controls directly on the receiver. And so all you get on the receiver is just some sound bars and really no option to control it. So you do have some buttons to adjust the volume, but for the most part, it's pretty simple. Now, as I said, case, you get a hard case with everything but the Saramonic. I don't know if I prefer or disagree with the hard case. I do disagree with how they designed this fabric case on the Saramonic microphones. So we already touched on the external microphones a little bit, but Just know that the external microphone recording on all of this works great, except for, of course, the Saramonic microphones that don't have that option. If you ever consider getting something that's more of like a shotgun / directional microphone, you probably are going to want to go through and look into a different microphone, because this is great for vlogging. It's great for pretty much most situations. It's just somewhere if you can't get a microphone on somebody or you're recording from a distance, this is really going to struggle. I find that if you're doing some type of YouTube videos, if you're doing an interview, if you're doing something that's a little bit more like putting a microphone up to somebody, podcasts, all that stuff, you're really going to be fine. It's just anytime you want that directional aspect, you want to incorporate something like that, you're just not going to get that. And I really can't think of one off the top of my head, but I'm sure there's cases when you can't get a microphone this close, or you don't want a big puck laying right here talking. And obviously the noise suppression, I think the Saramonic microphones do slightly better than the Maono microphones in terms of noise suppression. However, the Saramonic microphones are the only microphones that have the basically touchscreen on the physical microphone, built-in recording, and the ability for sound or noise cancellation. So between all those three, the Saramonic has taken the cake in that regard. The DJI mics don't have any built-in sound dampening, at least the option to turn that on, especially if you're doing something kind of run and gun live. You may want to consider that as well. But the Maono microphones, the sound cancellation is, I would say, pretty good as well. You can definitely tell when we test them, and I'll play some audio clips as well. So also I want to kind of compare the noise canceling with and without. So the first thing that you'll notice is this is currently without the noise canceling. When you press the noise canceling, a little button comes on here, as you can see, and then that enables the noise canceling. And I actually think it doesn't sound too bad when this is enabled. And then of course you can turn it back off and make the judgment of whether or not you think this is something that you would want to use in your everyday shooting. And we're also going to enable the noise cancellation feature. So that's all you do is you basically click up and you swipe through till you get to this lovely blue noise cancellation option. You tap that and you select HD noise reduction. So then this is of course what it sounds like at that same distance away from my face, and also put up against your chest where you kind of hear it normally if it was used as a lavalier microphone. I think this is something you can kind of make the judgment whether or not you like or not, but I think this is also pretty straightforward. Next up, I want to talk about durability. The DJI mics, of course, basically have this nice hard case, not too much concern. I mean, the durability is, I've been actually had these for maybe like 3 months or so, and I've got a couple little scratches on them, but the case overall, the microphones and all that have held up really nicely. Really well built, obviously, with everything DJI's done. The Maono microphones, they're actually scratched up a good bit already from just throwing them in my bag. So I will say that that's one thing I've noticed as well, is that really scratched up from just throwing it in a bag for recording and stuff and taking this on shoots. So yeah, I would say that like the plastic is a little cheaper. I think durability wise, this case is at least doing a good job protecting it. Scratched up, but at least, whereas the DJI mic has maybe a scratch or two, but they're a lot less noticeable because of this pattern. Saramonic microphone is fabric, so you're not going to see any scratches. Also, Saramonic microphones came with a bunch of screen protectors. Screen protectors for the microphones, screen protectors for the receivers. I was actually pleasantly surprised by that. I thought that was a nice to have feature, especially since these are all touchscreens, and it doesn't really affect the working of the touchscreen at all. Now, the charging situation on these is a little weird. The DJI microphones, I have had no issues charging. You put them in the box, they charge automatically. Same thing with the Maono microphones. However, it's weird a couple things with this microphone. Because this is all one hub, there is no USB-C port on these microphones, so you're basically like having to use the hub. You have to charge it from the hub, so it doesn't charge the microphones from the hub. And also, if the microphone is better or a higher charge than the hub, it gives you an error that says you need to remove external power. So you have to basically, you can't just like, take this, put this on top of your camera, talk into this. If this is if the microphone is charged higher than the hub, you have to remove that as well to get it to work. So also, if you want to get the recordings off of it, you need to go through and plug that in to a computer from the USB port on the hub, and then you can access both the devices. So it's a little weird, whereas the DJI microphones, to access a recording, you literally have a USB-C port on the side of them, and you go through and you plug in directly to that, and then you can access the recording on that. Also, I was greeted with a little surprise of some recordings of the QA, or the quality assurance testing, so people talking into that from the factory. So that was interesting. Added plus, not really a negative, just an interesting part there. But honestly, overall, I just find that the little impracticality there, but nothing too crazy. Just know some things about it. It's also not too crazy heavy either. Honestly, size-wise, I still give it to DJI. That DJI has the best form factor. This is a literal unit. Like this is practically, I think by surface area, sadly takes the most area. The Maono microphones, where the Saramonic takes slightly less. Then the DJI microphones, of course, are a little long, but they are, I would say, probably the least obtrusive to your eyesight when you're using it in recording. Now, when it comes to accessories, let's take a talk real quick about what all this comes with. The DJI microphones basically come with the receiver, which I have up here on the camera, and we have the microphones, and then you have these adapters for both your phone and like an iPhone and an Android phone. And these adapters are basically natively built into the receiver. So you plug it on the bottom of your phone and you're good to go. Other accessories includes this bag and a cable, a charging cable, the 2.5 millimeter headphone jack connector. You have these fluffy dead cat microphone covers and instructions, and this little baggie here as well. So even then, you can basically put the microphones in the bag and the hard case. So you have both the fabric to protect the case and the actual case as well. So overall, that's like a pretty good, solid bit. But the microphones themselves, you don't really have much ability to control how they're clipped, other than the fact that you have a magnet on the back here that then can clip onto the DJI mic. So then you can kind of clip that as well. If you don't want to have like the clip aspect, you can just kind of clip it, the magnet, put some fabric in there, and then put the magnet on the other side. So pretty solid, pretty small, pretty simple. I like it a lot. I've used it a lot. Saramonic microphones, you have a good number of accessories. You have the standard shoe mount that goes on the receiver. You pop this in there, and then you also have a screw hole on the bottom as well as the shoe mount. So that's for the receiver. For the microphones themselves, and I'll leave that on there for now. For the microphones themselves, you also have the ability for magnets on the back, kind of like how DJI did it right there. So you have a magnet that you can kind of put the microphone between some fabric, and then magnet. So pretty solid there. Also, you have the ability for clips. So say you want to have a clip instead, you can basically put this and adjust the clip. And these are pretty solid, but they all are magnetic, so they can be moved around a little bit. So for example, you can put the clip there, and then that works as well. And finally, let's talk about the Maono microphones, which I think take the cake as probably the best in terms of accessories, because you have that external microphone option. You have your camera 2.5 millimeter jack. You have the dead cat microphones. You also have that as well with the Saramonic. You have a bunch of cables, same things, etc. on the Saramonic. But you also have the external microphones. And also I'll do a test with the external microphones so you can hear them. So right here, I have the external microphone. As you can see, you have your lavalier, the little microphone here. And this is me talking into it about maybe 6 meters away, probably about where you do it normally. And so this is what it would sound like pretty much hooked up to you normally. And you can kind of make the judgment if this is something that you think is something you would want to use versus the standard onboard one. I'll unplug it real quick. And then you can make the judgment from here, also the same roughly placed, if you think this sounds normal or expected. So I think this is a pretty good comparison between the two, and you can kind of make the judgment which one you prefer. But they are nothing exceptional. They look probably like rather cheap, but they also sound pretty like decent. So if you maybe have something that's a little bit more noisy, you want it a little bit closer, something to consider as well. You have 2 microphones, the dead cat, camera jacks, and then of course USB-C charging cable. Nothing too crazy there, but lots of little accessories as well. I hope to see you around in another review video. Thanks for watching, and subscribe for more related tech reviews. Goodbye.